Of the Citizen Review Board. At this time, the September 26, 2023 meeting of the Citizen Review Board is now called to order. If you will, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will now ask our meeting clerk, Ms. Tanya Wilcox, if you will, please conduct the roll call.
Banks. Present. Collins. Present. Tamayo. Present. Reyes. Present. Guy. Akil.
Present.
Ingandela. Present. Valdez.
Let the record show that all members of the Citizen Review Board are present with the exception of Irene Guy and Carlos Valdez. At this time, I will ask our Vice Chair, Colonel Reyes, to read the meeting guideline.
Thank you and good evening. Please silence all electronic devices. The duties and responsibilities of the Citizens Review Board are to review completed department investigations involving use of force and cases of importance and interest to the community or the city, determine whether the disposition of reviewed cases was consistent with department policies and procedures, review matters of importance or interest and make recommendations regarding the handling of these matters, determine whether any revisions or additions to department policy and procedures are appropriate in reviewing matters of or importance or interest, and report findings and recommendations to the mayor and the chief of police. Cases that are brought before the Citizens Review Board are closed internal affairs cases that have been investigated and brought to the police chief for disposition. It is the Citizens Review Board's job to review the cases and render an opinion as to whether the investigation was done according to department policies and procedures. The Citizens Review Board members are provided the investigative files in advance of the meeting. The Citizens Review Board will hear from the department whenever matters of interest or importance are requested for review by the board or the department. The coordinator for the board is Captain Patrick Mesmer. Any person who wishes to make a complaint concerning a matter which may be considered by the Professional Standards Bureau should see Captain Mesmer for information on how to file a complaint. The board should not discuss matters where the city or the department may likely be a party in litigation. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Colonel. We'll now continue with the approval of the minutes from the meeting of July 25th, 2023. Are there any questions or provisions? Hearing none, I will need a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Board Member Colonel Reyes has made a motion to approve the minutes of the July 25th, 2023 meeting. Board Member Lincoln Tamayo has seconded the motion of approval of the minutes for the July 25th, 2023 meeting. Any further discussion? If you will, Dr. Collins.
I want to approve the minutes. I just want to make sure that the
Can you turn your microphone?
I'm so sorry. No problem with the minutes. I just wanted to make sure before we leave them that page 4 follow-up will be done today. Do we have that?
Page 4.
Yeah, there was a follow-up that was going to be given to us. It was on the answer for the weapons qualification for officers, for a particular officer. And I'm
Which-
fine.
Page 4, any particular item?
First paragraph. Do we bring that up later? I just want to just ask, that's all. So if it was inappropriate for me to do it.
Dr. Collins has recognized on the, according to the minutes, there was a request to be made on the next CRB meeting, which is today, and I don't think this particular item is on the agenda. However, I believe also when we created this request, we did state the flexibility in reference to receiving this response. But this is something that we can, if you're okay with the minutes, we can approve the minutes and we can discuss this on item
Okay,
8, Community and Tampa Police Department matters.
that's fine.
Any other further discussion? Hearing none, we'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raising hand. Any opposed, please show by raising hand. The motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 5, public comment. Do we have any participants for the public comment portion of our agenda? If you will, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Right now, starting? Yeah, okay. Hello, my name is Sandra Zickery. I'd like to inform that I had a meeting with the Chief of Police a few weeks ago, and I hired an attorney day of who used to be a Hillsborough County Sheriff Deputy. My attorney has reviewed the matters of this case and concurs with the concerns that I have been raising in the last few years. My attorney informed that the sworn affidavits and evidence I have prove allegations of Medicaid fraud, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, assault on a fetus, and attempted murder, and further informed that the evidence is substantial and the Tampa Police should issue immediate arrest warrants against these criminals who have illegally held me down and forced lethal amount of drugs without my consent, and failure to acknowledge and notate the affidavits in their police reports, deprive my rights to access the courts and violates my constitutional rights, as this conduct has affected several civil and federal cases that are currently pending and potential criminal prosecution. In part, according to one of the affidavits that I have, it states, Ms. Zickery maintains that she did not want to receive the epidural and denies having signed any consent forms. She further denies that there was a discussion of the risks or benefits prior to. According to 2 handwriting experts of the informed consent, the signature is not Ms. Zickery's. According to this analysis, informed consent was not properly obtained, and Ms. Zickery's signature, as it appears on the consent form, is not in fact her own. This constitutes to a violation of the standard of care as it pertains to the performance of any medical procedure upon a patient, be it being administered care in any clinical setting where that procedure is non-emergent. Thus, any emergency she has sustained during the placement, maintenance, or removal of her epidural was caused as a direct result of the negligence. I do have a spinal injury. It's called adhesive arachnoiditis, and this report was from a doctor who can opine about these matters in the state of Florida. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now ask whether we were any recorded comments received through the voicemail.
There were no recorded comments.
I will now ask if the clerk received any written comments for this meeting.
No written comments.
That would conclude the public comment portion of this agenda. We'll now continue to item 6. If any board members want to respond or make a statement or comment in reference to the commentary that we heard tonight, please feel free to do so. Hearing none, we will conclude item 6. We'll continue with item 7, items to be reviewed. Tonight, we're reviewing case number 22F-006. An officer took part in an investigation not assigned to him
and revealed information to another person, MOR 1402, departmental property restriction of use. Unfounded, exonerated, MOR 1814, restriction on revealing information sustained. The officer received a letter of counseling. Do we have a member of Tampa Police Department to present this case?
Good evening, Captain Kevin Schoolmeisters. There's been a change. Obviously, Captain Messman was promoted to Major. So Chief Burkall asked me to come back to take the reins again. So I'm happy to be back and addressing you.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
You're welcome. This case was investigated by Detective Salea, so he's here for any additional questions. But the summary of the final disposition letter on December 16th, 2022, a female was a victim of an aggravated battery that was investigated on the date it occurred by patrol units, and it was assigned to Detective Wolf of our domestic violence unit. During the initial investigation, the victim stated that she did not know who attacked her. The victim is an employee of a car rental company and was scheduled to work the day she was attacked. Due to her severe injuries and being hospitalized, the car rental company was made aware of her absence from work. On December 17th of the same year, an associate of the victim contacted the rental company notifying them the victim was out of the ICU and that they, the associate, were in possession of a car the victim had lawfully rented from the rental company. Corporal Pettit, girlfriend, worked at the rental company and was a supervisor within the same rental company. Corporal Pettit's girlfriend learned from another employee that the victim had rented a vehicle from the company. After learning that the victim had rented the vehicle, Corporal Pettit's girlfriend contacted him because she was concerned about the condition of the car and wanted to know if there was anything major about the case, because she wanted to know in case someone comes to the rental company to retaliate. Her concern was rooted in the fact that the victim had previously rented a car that was involved in a drive-by shooting. There was never an allegation of domestic violence made to Corporal Pettit, rather at best a hunch that it might be a boyfriend who committed the act, which was already under investigation. Corporal Noah Pettit investigated the matter by reviewing the body-worn camera footage and reading the report. Corporal Pettit hears on the video that the victim says that she knew who stabbed her. However, the officers on scene did not hear the comment because they were rendering aid to the victim. The officer on scene were told by the victim that she did not know who stabbed her. This prompted Corporal Pettit to send an email to Detective Wolf with the information that he learned from the video. On December 18th, while the case was still under investigation, Corporal Pettit sent screenshots of the body-worn camera showing the car and the victim to his girlfriend, seeking confirmation that the person in the screenshot was the victim. During the formal interview, Corporal Pettit confirmed that he told his girlfriend the victim did not tell the truth to the officers because she knew who her attacker was. In the disposition letter written by Captain Royka, who was his commanding officer, the case was unbiased and comprehensive, providing the reviewer with the facts needed to render an impartial decision. Based on the facts presented in this case, I believe that Corporal Pettit took it upon himself to investigate a case that was not assigned to him. He then shared information from the case with another person. Based on the records provided, he found Corporal Pettit did violate Manual of Regulations, specifically the Manual of Regulations 1814.02, which is a restriction on revealing information. That was sustained. The other allegation in regards to Manual of Regulation 1402, Department Property Restriction of Use, he was exonerated. Just I'm going to go over the MORs real quickly so you guys have an understanding. I know they were furnished to you. But the 1814 restriction on revealing information, department employees shall keep the official business of the department confidential. They shall not divulge the following information unless required by law. And his point 02, any information relative to an arrest or investigation except as approved by department policy, which obviously he violated. And the other one, which he was exonerated, was 1402, Department Property Restriction of Use. All physical objects issued by the Tampa Police Department to its employees shall remain the property of the department and shall be subject to all policies and procedures relating to department property. And .02 is property shall only be used for official purposes in the capacity for which it was designated. So I am open up to any questions any of the board members may have.
If you will, Mr. Tamayo?
Captain, on 1402, on MOR 1402, was Corporal Pettit issued anything by the Tampa Police Department that was allegedly used in this case?
He is,
property issue?
you know, the computers in each district, there's computers that are open to the use of the police department employees.
Okay, the use of computers. Now, how did Corporal Pettit send the information to, was it on that TPD issued computer, or was it on his cell phone?
No, what he did is he took a picture for our body worn cameras. We have it's called evidence.com. It's a platform where we restore our digital evidence into. And what he did is he played it, and then he took a video of with his cell phone of the car and then the victim, and that's what he gave to his
Right,
girlfriend.
So it was done on his cell phone.
Correct,
That cell phone was not issued by TPD to him.
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we're not only command staff are issued cell phones.
Okay, so 1402 really isn't even relevant.
Correct, that's why he was exonerated by it.
Exactly.
But there's
So-
also a part in our domestic violence SOP that, you know, third-party reports will be investigated by all TPD personnel. So that is the fact that even though he did, and I'm sure Detective Hof would have discovered it, that on the body-worn camera, that the victim actually did identify who attacked her. But his problem was he told his girlfriend.
Right, but we're just now dealing with 1402. That was not issued, so I would move now that we concur with the finding of the Tampa Police Department that Corporal Pettit is exonerated of violation of 1402. Let's just take that off the table.
Mr. Tamayo has made a motion to move that the board concur with the findings of the unfounded, exonerated of MOR 1402. Dr. Collins has seconded the motion. Any further discussion in reference to MOR 1402 in reference to the case 22F-006? Hearing none, we can continue with the vote on the MOR 1402. All those in favor, please show by raising of hand. Any opposed, please show by raising of hand. That motion passes of the exoneration of MOR 1402. We can continue discussion in reference to the MOR 1814, restriction on revealing information, which was sustained. Any further discussion?
Captain, on 1814, on MOR 1814, obviously, during an investigation, everything needs to be kept confidential. But .02 says any information relative to an investigation except as approved by departmental policy. So my question is there any other policy allowing for divulging this information to any outside party? Is there any policy out there that would allow, in this particular case?
Well, if it was a state attorney's office, obviously you're allowed to divulge information, a fellow officer, but anytime you divulge, you can't even tell your significant other of any cases that you're investigating.
There's no such exception, no such special policy?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And is that just in particular open cases, or does that continue with closed cases?
Well, once it's closed, it's public record.
Okay.
I do want to correct, I said our officers are issued cell phones, but not smartphones or the flip phones from a long time ago. Only our command staff has the smartphones where you could take a picture in.
Correction
Thank you.
noted. Well, as we receive and monitor the monthly complaints, I selected this particular case to give the board the opportunity to review a complaint case, even though it's a victim complaint case. Obviously, we only review closed cases. That supports the importance to allow due process without interference. In this particular case, Corporal Pettit did discover information that was helpful in the investigation. But obviously, in my opinion, and in opinion of administration as well, it was just the motivation was supported by outside influence. The chair is now open, if you will, Dr. Collins,
Just one question.
if you will.
I got it. You said it, and I just wanted to ask the question. Just for clarity, and I thought I read that. Officer Pettis did report that after he realized that there was a connection and a change. Is that correct?
He told the investigating detective that video contained where she identified the suspect in the case.
And
But-
so that doesn't save him either.
What's that? I'm sorry?
I was just saying, that does not save him.
No, it does not. We have very strict rules. You cannot reveal
Okay.
information. So it's an ongoing investigation.
Okay.
Now, obviously, if the only thing that Corporal Pettit did was to contact Detective Wolf, that's perfectly fine.
Yes,
It's just
correct.
literally going to the outside.
Yeah, it involves information on the outside.
Any further discussion, questions, statements? Hearing none, we will continue with the vote in reference to, we concur with the findings, the disposition of this case in reference to the MOR 1814, being that it was sustained, and I believe the deposition resulted in a letter of counseling. Can I have a motion?
I would move that we concur with that finding to sustain the violation of MOR 1814.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Board Member Lincoln Tamayo has made a motion in reference to the board concurs with its findings and deposition in reference to MOR 1814. Colonel Reyes has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we can continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raising hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Detective Schoolmeister. And welcome back again. We'll now continue with the agenda for our community and Tampa Police Department matters. And we had tabled, there was a previous discussion in reference to the approval of the minutes of page 4, first paragraph. If you will, Dr. Collins, you can take the lead on that.
Yes. Just in reading the minutes, and I did not know, but that number seems to be interesting. And during that period of time, they had requested the dates of weapon qualification concerning a specific TPD officer that was involved in this case. And they didn't have the definite answer, and so they indicated they would bring it back. And I didn't know if that quantity, that number, had been determined, and if not, if it need to be continued until next meeting, that'd be fine.
I'm sorry, would you mind restating that?
Okay.
I don't have the minutes right in front of me.
It's okay. They actually talks about the qualification for weapon qualification for officers, and it indicated that this was once a year. And then apparently one of the officers that was involved in this case, it was questioned as to what it was, what was that weapon qualification date, and they indicated they didn't have it. And I was trying to figure out, did he have the annual, we had talked about this previously, had he had the annual qualification, or if they were also looking for a certain number, and I didn't know which one it was, but I was curious.
Okay.
And this is in a reflection to the minutes of July 25th meeting. Under page 4, first paragraph states, discussion took place amongst members and Detective DeGatney regarding the dates of weapons qualification concerning a specific TPD officer. Detective DeGatney stated that he did not have the definite answer to the question and will report back with the answer at the next CRB meeting. And that's the request or follow-up Dr. Collins is stating. Obviously, there's been a change of the guard, so to speak, and we did mention in that particular meeting the flexibility to gather in that particular request. So we could just get it notated and table it to the next agenda, unless that information is present tonight, we could just table that request.
Yeah.
We won't put a specific deadline on it, but we can put it under items continued,
Mr. Chair, if I may comment.
if you will,
I'm
Reyes.
just trying to jog my memory from when we were having this discussion. If I recall, I think what the issue was, and I was part of this conversation, was the department's policy on your weapons qualification, your frequency of qualification. And if I recall correctly, I believe the answer was 1 year. Every year you do an annual qual. And if that's the case, I do recall when I was, and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, but when I was going through the statements and I was looking at the timelines, there was an incident in which one of the police officers that actually used his firearm, when you looked at the dates, it was outside the 1 year window of his qualification. I think it was like 1 month. And we had a bit of a conversation about that. And I think that's really what the genesis of all this was about, was trying to get to that.
I could probably answer that question.
Go ahead, sir.
That we qualify on our duty firearms annually. So 1 year, it's not necessarily 1 year, because I'll give myself as an example. Last Wednesday I qualified, so that being in September, but the year prior I did it in December. So what happens is every year we give our officers an opportunity to sign up for in-service training. We hold it twice a year. The first one is for our high liability areas such as shooting, driving, CPR, defensive tactics. Your date is not always the same. It's, the officer gets to choose of what time, and us being in Florida, most don't like the summer, so the first ones come, try to get the fall or the spring, so it's never necessarily the same, but they do have to, even through our accreditation and by the state standards, we have to do it annually.
So it's not so much by the strict literal count.
Correct.
1 year of 365 versus calendar year, if you will, and you do exercise some flexibility within the year to year.
Correct. So
Understand.
probably very few people qualify at the same date every year.
Okay.
And I think the reason, and that was good, knowing that you were here in that discussion, because I know it was late last month, that month, well, barely. But the reason, because when I had read that case, I think that was the case that dealt with the young man who had came over across the line, and there was a killing in that case, and about 52, and I'm assuming that the concern was somebody, a multitude of officers, he shot first, and then you had 52 bullets that were fired. And so I assume that it came because, okay, let's look at all the individuals that were involved, and did they meet that qualification?
So just just depending on when they go to in-service for that year.
So it's not a
Set date,
very
no,
strict
ma'am.
set date, but somewhat within that year.
Within that
plus or
calendar year.
minus. Probably need to be stated plus or minus.
That particular date of that qualifying time frame, is that something upper management present to that particular officer? Is there a memo, or this should be scheduled during this time frame? Is there some type of notification?
Yeah, well, we send out, actually our training department sends out to the department, this is the first phase of our in-service training, here are the dates, the open date, the end date, and the date that everybody has to sign up by, because if you don't sign up by that date, then they just plug you in. Because like I said, we almost have 1,000 officers, and logistically, it can be quite challenging. So if you hadn't signed up by the due date, so to speak, then they just schedule it for you.
What would be the opposition if an officer failed to meet that time frame with the flexibility?
We watch it. It jeopardizes their state certification. If they don't qualify by the end of the year, then they'll be put on light duty and sent out to be qualified.
Thank you. Any other questions in reference to the previous discussion of that particular case, and that's noted in the minutes?
The only thing is, has that individual received his qualifications yet?
I can't say,
And I know
I
you
would
can't
be,
answer.
my guess would be yes, but I can't say for sure, but I could check and get back to you, if that's what you'd like.
Not. You say it's not strict, so I'm okay. It's just because of why it was associated with that case, I would have hoped that he would have been able to get in very quickly.
Yeah, I understand that, absolutely.
Continuing with item 8 under Community and Tampa Police Department matters, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the administration for the recent invite of the past town hall meeting, which was held on September 12th of this month, as requested by the board to be more informative of TPD events. Did any of our board members present get the opportunity to take advantage of that particular town hall meeting that was were invited by the chief? Okay, well, just notate that we placed that request out to TPD to give us information of upcoming events, and if the schedule allows, we can take advantage of some of those opportunities. It'd be greatly applauded.
Chairman, if I can address that, is that actually there's a town hall meeting tonight down in my old area, which would be Sector B south of Kennedy. We try to do those monthly, but it's logistically trying to find a church or a business that'll give us their space, so to speak, to have those. But Irene Guy, who's not here, she sent me an email, and we would try to do a better job as once we know of sending you all an invite, so you'll know. So as soon as I know, you'll know, at least that day.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
the question, are they always on Tuesday night?
Yes.
That's the other problem with Baxter.
So, Mr. Chair, a comment on that. Did we have a previous discussion where we were entertaining the thought of, instead of us, based on how we were doing the outreach in the communities, to latch on to these town halls, and when the police were running their respective town halls, that we, as a CRB, we would also join in, perhaps, because there would be greater participation within the community, we could use that as part of, to fulfill part of our requirements. Was that part of the discussion that we were having before, or is that a possibility?
I think there were discussions, but according to the new ordinance, I think we fulfilled our outside of the hall meetings, and those meetings will have to be for Citizen Review Board only, for us to be under that particular ordinance. But again, you know, we definitely want to be able to reach out to the community every chance given, and especially if TPD is hosting a particular program, it'll be great for us to take that opportunity and get out and be able to respond with the community. So,
Thank you.
Captain, is the chief at all these?
Yes. If he's in town, yeah, he'll be there.
And,
maybe we'll, Dr. Collins.
yeah, we did have that discussion because we felt that that's what we were doing earlier. And we were meeting more of the community, a much larger group than what we've done complying with the ordinance.
Right.
We even mentioned that when city council brought up the fact that this is what they had put in the ordinance, and we said, do you know that we're going out with TPD? And that was much more fruitful to me because the audience was much larger. We were there, TPD was doing it. I mean, it was much better, I'll say it that way. Since we've been doing it, the attendance have been extremely low to none, almost. And so I know it's an ordinance, and I don't know at some point if the board, having tried this for a year or two, would want to go back to the city council and ask them to reconsider, because the whole focus is not just to be in the community, it's to be out there with the people. And so if we go out there and we got 2 or 3 people, or we got 10, that's still not like if the chief and TPD is out there and they got 40, 50 to 100.
Right.
So we don't want to go out there just to go. And I'm going to go ahead and say it, in addition to doing that, we're pulling staff away, all kind of equipment to do the recordings for a very small number of people. And that's what the results have been thus far. And on behalf of staff not having to do that, as well as us going where we can interact with more people, I don't know if we would go back and ask the council to reconsider that, but, yeah.
Yeah, the meetings are pretty well attended. the town hall's been pretty successful so far.
Yeah. As they were previously, before we had to change based on the ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that moves us into our next item on the agenda, CRB staff reports and business in reference to the CRB community survey. As a follow-up in reference to the CRB conducting the community survey every 2 years to gather public feedback of TPD policies and procedures. I believe in December 2023 is when the survey is to be conducted by the CRB and posted for a 10-week period. However, to my understanding, TPD has started to investigate conducting its own survey, and we had discussion in reference to the CRB participating in that survey. And I also understand upon the last discussion of the subject, TPD were also looking into other avenues and exploring the options with SurveyMonkey, Zincity, and other platforms. So we could open up that item for discussion in reference to where TPD are with their particular survey, and are we going to continue with a joint venture? And if so, what role will CRB play in that joint venture?
So hopefully, CRB will participate in the TPD survey, and our plan is to bring you back the questions based on, the questions that existed in the prior survey that was done. I've reviewed the prior survey. We've gotten with a provider for the survey. They said they would be able to do a similar survey with similar questions so that we keep some continuity. So that is our goal. But TPD has some additional questions that outside of this community survey that it also needs to include on the survey. So we would like to invite CRB's input and participation. So what we would like to do is, once we secure the draft of questions with the company, we can bring them back and get input from you.
Okay, sounds great. Any questions, statements?
Unfortunately, I have a question.
Dr. Collins?
Would that then be acceptable based on this survey that we were already doing, that the city council was not aware of, and put this in the ordinance? Since we can't go in with TPD in the community meetings, and I might have asked this before, and I'm assuming the answer is yes based on what you said, will we now be able to do the survey with TPD and be in compliance to the ordinance?
This, what we're proposing would make you in compliance with the ordinance, correct?
We will be?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We'll now continue with item 10, items to be continued. The only item that we have to be continued, and that will be upcoming in our next month meeting, is that case matter for Kelsey, case number 21C171. That presentation is scheduled for the next CRB meeting.
And now we will add, no, we don't need that. Yeah.
We'll now continue with announcements and new business. Item 11. We have on the agenda for an update to be announced in reference to the CRB implementing independent counsel. If you will, Ms. Kamari Pettis-Mackle.
Good evening, Board. Kamari Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. As the Board is aware, City Council passed Ordinance 2023-52, which amended Code Section 18-8, subsection HC, which is the provision in which this Board, Code Section 18.8 is the provision in which this Board operates. But specifically, this ordinance was passed to provide the CRB with a legal advisor who is not employed by the City of Tampa, but as a city employee. The city attorney received approximately 5 letters of interest or applications for this position. The ordinance states that the CRB may establish procedures in order to select this legal advisor. So I have a couple of suggestions, a few suggestions, if I may, just on how the board can determine the process to achieve this goal. The first suggestion is for the board to pick a meeting to give the candidates an opportunity to appear in person before you to introduce themselves. The second thing is for recommendation is that I will, according to the ordinance, provide the board a copy of all of the letters or resumes of the candidates in advance of that meeting, so you will be prepared and be able to review their resume or their application. Next, at the meeting that the board chooses for the candidates to come, the candidates can come and introduce themselves and explain to you why he or she is interested in having that to be considered for that position. At that meeting, you could ask questions of the candidates, but at that meeting, you could also, at the conclusion of all the candidates presenting themselves to you, you could make a motion to recommend the city attorney hire a particular person in order to be the legal advisor for the board. So those are my suggestions. But if you have other suggestions, this is the time. But the next, and it's up to the pleasure of the board and how they would like to proceed.
If you will, Mr. Tamayo.
I have a suggestion that the city council can take under advisement. Isn't the city council considering, along with the mayor's office, cutting $45 million from the budget?
The budget has been approved, yes.
Well, the budget has, are there any further cuts? Okay.
Not that I'm aware
It's
of.
unfortunate that they did not consider this as a part of the cutting process. But other than that, we'll do whatever we want to do, but I would have cut that job. Taxpayer money. We had $45 million in over expenditures. That would have been a great cut right there. But so we are stuck. We are stuck with the. No, I'll leave it at that.
Are we stuck?
Independent counsel was a hot topic amongst the community. Citizen voices were heard and leadership has responded. I was one of the individuals that expressed my opinion that I share with Tamayo in reference to the expense and in reference to our current legal representation was able to fulfill any request that we offered without resistance. But however, now with due process, again, under the leadership, I will welcome this tool with open hands and utilize it in the best interest of the community. So Ms. Kamaria Pettis-Mackle has stated some ideas and moving forward in the selection of identifying the position and candidates of that position. Anyone wants to have any other options past what Ms. Kamaria Pettis-Mackle stated? We want to open up discussion in reference to the options that she presented and how do we move forward?
Mr. Chair, so a procedural question. So if we are to have the candidates come before us, then it's within this forum, correct?
They would come at a meeting, a public meeting.
Right, a regular
Correct.
this meeting,
Correct,
not a separate public meeting.
correct.
Okay, so then
Unless that's the pleasure of the board to have a separate meeting for that.
I understand, thank you. So I'm just thinking from logistics, and thinking about the time it would take and how engaged we would be and what questions we would ask. That would have to be built in addition to our regular itinerary. So that's just a consideration. We would have to probably, like you said, there were 5, correct?
Correct.
Right, so we would have to be thoughtful about how we would parse it out. I don't think we can knock it out in one meeting.
And I support your concern, and I'd like to also share as we approach the holiday season. Typically, we combine 2 months of meetings sometime in November, and that also depends on the is the building will be available as well, the flexibility of that schedule. We had the liberty to kind of look down that calendar, and I believe we have a pencil date where the hall will be available in November 21st. And being that that would be the second and last meeting of this fiscal year, maybe we can schedule an agenda to just accept that particular topic. So these are some of the things that we can discuss, but I don't think we're prepared to have the candidates be present, in my opinion, for the next upcoming meeting in October.
Question. Attorney Pettis-Michaels, let me ask if, oh, thank you. Let me ask if, consistent with what you said, we can adjust our agenda as we wish and clear off the agenda and have a meeting that once we come out of our minutes from the previous meeting, we could go into them and then we could set the time so that we could do them all, perhaps. And the reason I'm asking that, is there a time frame on us from the city council as to when we need to take action for this?
That was not provided in the ordinance.
It wasn't?
No.
So we're not in a hurry if we
There is no-
decided to start?
There's no
this?
time provision regarding this matter.
So we don't have, okay, and then whenever we decide to do it, then if we can clear the agenda and try to limit the presentation from each with a short Q&A, and then try to do them all, if at all possible, and get them all out at one time. Sometimes it's better when you're hearing people and you do them all the same. The other question I would ask is there a format that you could recommend to us so that as we mark those individuals that we hear, each one of us will have a format so there'll be some consistency in our evaluation and that we could mark them and, yeah.
And I apologize, I'm trying to closely hear what you're saying. You would like an evaluation sheet for each candidate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have specific questions that you would like or criteria that you would like to be placed on each evaluation sheet?
I'm be honest with you, I don't, because this is, I do not, because this is complying with what the community wanted. And so I think if we had some evaluation points, it should at least reveal to them how these candidates will meet what it is they want. Only thing I would think of is, have you ever done this before? You know, things of that nature. How long did you do it? Where did you do it? And, you know, in what venue? Was it in the state of Florida? Was it in another state? And was it under CRB type board? Things of that nature, or the experience. But other than that, no.
Well, earlier in your presentation, you stated before we have this meeting that we'll have access to the resume, we'll have access to the application. So once we have the opportunity to review that material, that may share insight on some of the questionings that we may want to create.
And just for reference, Mr. Chair, I could email that to all the board members this week.
Okay, so that information.
So you can
is
have it
available.
in before your October meeting.
So we can get that information within this week first. I think we can continue the discussion and maybe then present questions on an evaluation sheet that can be present. And if we can continue with that route, we may be open for a motion to try to get some type of conclusion on this by our last meeting of the month, November 21st. So we can start off the new year with the right direction and not having interruptions in legal counsel and things of that nature. That's just a suggestion.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Ms. Pettis-Michael. So procedurally, would it be proper if you sent all of us offline the resumes and at our own leisure at home, we're reviewing it, and then one-on-one, we send back to you what we believe to be some questions, and then now you have pretty good data individually from us, because we can't, because of sunshine, all that. But then you get that and you can compile that. Then is there any way in which we could then see that compilation, prior to the next meeting.
I'll get that done.
I mean, does that make sense?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. Thanks.
And I would ask, if these individuals are not all within the state of Florida,
They are.
they are?
Yes.
Okay, so travel hopefully wouldn't be a problem where we could do them all in the same night.
So if it's the pleasure of the board, what I'd ask is if you would like to hold a meeting on November 21st, 2023, that the board make a motion to hold a meeting on November 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. If that is the pleasure of the board, with that date confirmed, the city attorney, we can invite those candidates, let them know in advance, well in advance, that that is the date in which they are to come to present themselves to the Citizen Review Board. They'll have enough advance notice about that, that date, that it's upon them to appear. So if that's the pleasure of the board, I just ask for that motion regarding the November 21st.
Chair is open to a motion.
Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes, if you will.
Mike Schmidt, City Attorney, I had an idea also that maybe you could consider. When you do the procurement process, there's typically several categories in which you assign points to. So for example, I heard the word experience. You might say experience gets 15 points out of 100. You might say cost. So for example, I can tell you already some of the attorneys were saying they wouldn't do it for any less than, $400 an hour or something like that. So you may find that there are categories that we already have in the city from our procurement process that might be helpful. We could share those with you.
Yes.
And you could decide if, how many points you want to assign to these categories, what categories you like, which ones you think are applicable. And that might be easier just to follow our standard procurement type process in thinking about this. And then when you do a bid out for some service, sometimes you may say, well, this one doesn't even meet the minimum qualifications. So we have 5 candidates. We believe they pass the initial minimum qualifications, but that doesn't mean you necessarily need to even interview all 5 of them. So the other suggestion is when you get these 5 resumes and we can give you the procurement thing, and you may say, I think next month you may come back and say, I think you only need to invite 3. The board may say, or you only need to invite 2. So we don't have to invite all 5. Just a suggestion. So maybe hold that motion for us bringing them all in November until you've had a chance to look at them. Come back next month and decide if you actually want to interview all 5 of them. Because you may narrow this down quickly to a couple and not even feel the need to bring them in.
Do we have to interview any of them?
The rules are up to you.
This is your procedure too. Come on.
I definitely.
We're just giving you some
I
suggestions.
definitely like that suggestion along with Ms. Kamaria's suggestion as well. Especially, a discussion with 5 candidates can get pretty lengthy. But if we had that procurement and that can share some type of process elimination, just meeting our standards, just to support a recommendation. We aren't the decision makers, but just enough information for us to come up with a group recommendation. I think the chair is open to that suggestion with the collaboration of both ideas before we set a motion in stone in reference to November 21st of all 5 candidates. Let's take a look at the material and maybe we can come up with a motion in our next month's meeting in October.
Mr. Chair, does the attorney's office have a process in place where they solicit outside counsel that could perhaps be used as a format?
I don't know. If that's the same.
We solicited this already, but I guess you're saying,
A process where you've hired outside counsel, what you use as a basis for determining who you actually selected,
we're gonna have to ask the city attorney.
as
I don't know
opposed to
that.
looking at a generic
Yeah, that's,
format
I
for
know,
procurement,
you're right,
something that is
and
specific to what we're looking for.
they do have a process. What it is exactly, I don't wanna say, because I'm not sure.
We'll get back to you about that specific process that you're referencing.
Yes.
Okay,
And then
well,
I have another one.
if you will, Dr. Collins.
Is there any reason for us to push this? Most times when you are trying to go through a process, that process may be 60 or 90 days. Is there any reason why we need to say we're gonna interview people in 2023? Could that come up? That's why I asked you, well, we're time certain. If there's no deadline, can we not rush this process and use each of our meetings that we have for the remainder of this year to look at different components of it, and then by 2024, then maybe we would be ready to listen to the candidates that, because we may look at all 5 of them and say none of them qualify, start over again.
Well, I think that the importance is a group recommendation. Again, we're not the decision makers, and if we don't consider our input, then a decision may be made without our input.
No, we're
So-
still in the process.
So, where's the process on a city council level on the decision making as far as picking an applicant without the CRB recommendation?
Well, the CRB, you provide the recommendation to the city attorney.
Okay.
So you have to, according to the ordinance, and if I just put it right up here, you have to provide, this is the second page of the ordinance, and this is the criteria for the applicants to meet, the minimum criteria, right here. But you establish your procedures to select its legal advisor, and the city attorney shall hire the CRB legal advisor based upon the recommendations of the CRB. But there is no timeline or time crunch regarding this ordinance, so I apologize, I didn't say that initially. There is no time crunch for this.
Okay. Well, I think we had discussion. I think we have a template of the direction that we want to proceed, and we'll continue to follow that path. And again, we're not restrained by time frame, but in my opinion, I would like to bring some type of closure as a goal within this year, if possible. No pressure, but if that's unable to do so, then it'll table into next year's agenda. But I think we got a good game plan to move forward on. Once we get that information, we'll just continue the process.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I agree with you with one exception. And
If you will, Dr. Collins.
I say I agree with you, Mr. Chair, with what you just said in the process we're looking at, with one exception, and that is, I don't want to feel like we're rushing it, and so I don't see nothing wrong with waiting until 2024, and that give us time, particularly if we want to take another month off for the holidays. We only have October and November, and October's taken, and I don't want us to rush into it, and then we rush into the wrong thing. So even if it's January 2024 when we come back, the first of the year, we should have gone through some of these processes that we've identified now. And then that gives us a little bit of time to make sure we get the right person in.
Agreed. However, if we can still receive the material as soon as possible, will definitely help support the process. In that same item, as discussed, next meeting will be held October 24th, 2023, here at the Old City Hall, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602. Before I adjourn this meeting, I would like to give any of our board members the opportunity to add any final comments or statements at this time. If you will, Mr. Lincoln Tamayo.
Just wanted to ask Captain Schoolmeesters the status of the officer who was hit by the vehicle last month. Is he okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, very good. And it so happens I heard this morning, it's been a concern of mine for a while now. We see these tire marks all over the city of these, I think they're called donuts. And apparently there was one in the middle of a very, very large crowd on Water Street. It's becoming epidemic.
Yeah, we have task force set up, and we partner with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, and we monitor social media and whatnot. So if we know, because usually they advertise where they're going to do it. Now you have spontaneous ones, so we can't be everywhere, but we try to get them, and we do. You know, they're racing or whatnot, we'll seize their vehicles, make arrests.
So there is a task force now working on it.
Yeah, we have specific detectives watching and,
Very good.
social media.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Any other final statements or comments, questions?
I'm gonna say this
Dr. Collins?
as a final statement. I know that we are complying with the new ordinance. Is there any time that we would have the opportunity to ask if things are not working? Do we have the opportunity to go back to the council and ask for any modification?
Kamari Pettis-Mackle from the legal department. Yes, Dr. Collins, you could use your time when you present the annual report to city council. That could be your time, and your time to talk to city council about any recommendations for changes to the board. The board has mentioned overall a couple of things. One were the community-wide meetings, possibly changing how that is in the ordinance, and you've had your discussion tonight. So I would encourage the board to utilize the annual report to address any concerns or requests for changes to the Citizen Review Board at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. With no other questions, comments, or concerns, the Citizen Review Board is now adjourned.